Everyone thinks she was the perfect mom, the kind of woman who baked cookies and kissed scraped knees. But I know what happened when the doors closed. And now I have proof.
Welcome to Reddit Toxic Family Telltales channel. New episode every day.
When I walked into that gym for the first time, I honestly thought my biggest challenge would be the wait on the bar. I had no idea it would be people. The guy at the front desk gave me this weird, uncomfortable look. Then he leaned in and whispered, the owner doesn't really like skinny guys working out here. Might want to try somewhere else. I told him I'd already paid for the month online. He just sighed like I'd signed my own eviction notice. That's when I saw him bow a wall of muscle-curling dumbbells that weighed more than I did. The moment our eyes met, his expression shifted into this predatory grin. I swear it felt like I just stepped into the lion's den. What nobody in that place knew was that before the cancer, I wasn't just some random skinny guy. I'd squatted 800 pounds, held 2 world records in my weight class. I used to feel unshakable. But after treatment, my strength was a mystery. I didn't know if any of it was still in there, or if it had all been carved out of me. I walked to the squat rack and started with just the empty bar, like I always did. Form first, breath steady, shoulders tight. That's when Bo's buddy Greg whipped out his phone, recording me loud enough for the whole gym to hear. "Look at this guy," he laughed, treating 45 pounds like it's a world record attempt. I kept my mouth shut, but I could feel Bo watching me, like a shark circling its prey. I added 1 plate to each side. Bo didn't say a word at first. He just walked up behind me until I could feel his breath on the back of my neck. "Little man," he said in a low voice, "this is a serious gym for serious lifters. Planet Fitness is 2 blocks down. No judgment there. You'd fit right in." He poked my spine mid-squat. "Damn, I can count every bone. You're built like a xylophone." The jab threw me off. My balance wavered. I barely caught the bar. People laughed. I felt my face go hot. Then his girlfriend wandered over, took one look at me and said, "Oh my God, are you okay? Like, medically?" Bo grabbed my arm and wrapped his massive hand around my bicep, and it fit with room to spare. He lifted it like a prop. "Feel this," he shouted. "Chicken bone. This is what happens when gamers try to play athlete." People started gathering like it was a sideshow. I moved to the bench press trying to focus, but Bo followed. Greg snatched my gym bag, dumped it out onto the floor, and my old competition photos, the ones I'd carried with me like proof of who I used to be, fluttered across the mat. Photos of me at 220 pounds, pulling 900 at nationals. Bo picked one up and laughed. "Fake pictures. Bro photoshopped his head on someone else's body. He ripped them. Years of memories shredded like trash. Then came the gym scale. Bo lifted me like a rag doll and dropped me onto it. 132 pounds of pure weakness," he announced. His girlfriend cackled. "My purse weighs more." And just to really drive the humiliation home, Bo grabbed me under my arms and started curling me like a barbell. 1, 2, 3. Each lift dug into my ribs, right where the surgical scars still ached if I slept wrong. He ripped my shirt down the middle, flexing beside me in the mirror like I was a punchline. My ribs, my scars, everything, exposed to a crowd with their phones out. "This," he roared, "is what skipping gym looks like. Concentration camp chic." I wanted to disappear. Greg called the manager over, saying I was making people uncomfortable and needed medical clearance. Bo added, "It's bad for business. Who's gonna buy supplements if they see this walking around?" The manager looked uneasy, but he didn't say a word. And in that moment, it hit me. No one here was going to help me. I was about to load another plate when Bo grabbed my wrist, hard, bone against bone. "Time for you to leave," he growled. Gone was the showman. His voice had turned sharp, dangerous. Greg blocked the other side. "We don't need your kind here," Bo spat. "This disease-ridden crap kills the vibe." And something inside me finally broke. I twisted my wrist, muscle memory from 1,000 wrestling drills, and snapped out of his grip. Then I shoved him, hard enough that the wolf finally stumbled. For half a heartbeat, Bo just stared at me, shocked. Then his face twisted into pure, burning rage. He charged, all 260 pounds of him, barreling toward me like a freight train. That was the moment I had to choose. Trust the strength I'd spent 6 months clawing back, or let him break me again. My body moved before my mind could catch up. I sidestepped. His shoulders slammed into the squat rack with a deafening metallic crash, and the entire gym went silent. The weights rattled. The rack shifted inches across the floor. Bo spun around clutching his shoulder, eyes locked on me. Greg had his phone out, filming. Someone yelled that they were calling 911. I bent down, scooped up the shredded remains of my photos with shaking hands, shoving them into my bag. My breath came in shallow bursts. The manager stepped in front of Bo, but no one stopped me as I walked to the door. I pushed through the glass and out into the sunlight, wearing nothing but my tank top because Bo had torn everything else to shreds. When I finally made it to my car, I couldn't even get the key in the ignition. My hands were trembling too hard. I looked down and saw dark bruises blooming on my wrist, the same wrist Bo had crushed in his grip. My ribs throbbed. Purple shadows were spreading over the scars that had already seen too much. I pulled out my phone, snapped photos. Wrist, Ribs. Torn shirt. Timestamp in the corner. Proof. Then I sat there in the parking lot, shaking, not sure if I was going to cry or pass out. I opened my texts and typed out the only thing I could manage. Can you come get me? Something happened at the gym. I sent it to Derek. He replied in less than 30 seconds. Are you hurt? 18 minutes later, his truck pulled into the lot. I'd spent every second watching the gym doors, half expecting Bo to come looking for me. Derek got out fast. One look at me through the window, and his whole face changed. I opened the door and showed him the bruises, the ripped shirt. For a long, quiet moment, he didn't say a word. His jaw just clenched, his fists curled. Then, steady and low, he asked, Can you walk? I nodded. Good. We're going to urgent care. Now. I started to protest. He cut me off. We're going. The walk to his truck made my ribs ache worse. As he drove, I told him everything: Bo's taunts, Greg's filming, the scale, the shove, the charge. Derek's knuckles turned white on the steering wheel, but he didn't interrupt. When I got to the part about pushing Bo, he finally spoke. That's self-defense, he said firmly. You didn't start it. We pulled into urgent care 20 minutes later. And for the first time since I'd walked into that gym, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't alone in this fight anymore. The waiting room smelled faintly of disinfectant and stale coffee. Maybe 5 other people sat scattered around the plastic chairs, staring at their phones or the floor tiles. I walked up to the intake desk, still clutching the folder with my ID and insurance card. The nurse glanced up from her computer, and the moment her eyes landed on me, she tilted her head and asked gently, Are you currently in cancer treatment? That question hit me like a slap. I forced a breath through my teeth and said, No, I finished treatment. I just need someone to check my ribs. She slid a clipboard toward me. Fill out everything, including your cancer history. I sat down, the plastic chair squeaking beneath me. The fluorescent lights overhead were too bright. Derek sat next to me, his knee bouncing with restless energy. Water or coffee? He asked, nodding toward the vending machine. Water, I said quietly. 15 minutes later, the nurse called my name. She took my vitals, blood pressure, temperature, weight. The scale read 134 pounds, 2 pounds heavier than Bo's damn gym scale. She scribbled it all down and asked why I'd come in. I rolled up my sleeve, showing her the bruises blooming across my wrist. Someone grabbed me hard. I've had surgery here, so I just want to make sure nothing's messed up. Her brow furrowed. Was this domestic violence? I shook my head. No, Jim. She nodded, made a note in my chart, and led me to an exam room. It was cold. So cold the paper on the table crinkled beneath me when I sat down. It smelled like antiseptic and quiet. Derek stood by the door, scrolling his phone but clearly not relaxed. About 10 minutes later, the door opened. Dr. Martinez walked in, maybe mid-50s, gray hair pulled back neatly. She introduced herself and asked me to walk her through everything that had happened. I told the story again while she gently examined my wrist. She asked about my cancer history, what treatment when it ended, the surgery. When she pressed over the rib scar, pain shot through my side like a wire being pulled too tight. I hissed through my teeth. She said, Let's get x-rays to be safe. I don't want to risk anything around those surgical sites. A tech escorted me to the x-ray room. The machine clicked and hummed as I shifted into awkward positions, holding still through the ache in my ribs. 20 minutes later, Dr. Martinez was back with a tablet, pulling up the images. Good news, no breaks or fractures, she said, tapping the screen. But your bones are still rebuilding after chemo. You need to be careful. Impacts like this can cause serious damage. She checked my pupils with a small penlight, asked if I'd been hit in the head, and then wrote everything down on a notepad in neat, slanted handwriting. Follow up with your oncologist within 48 hours. Ice the bruises 20 minutes at a time. Ibuprofen's fine, but don't go over 600 milligrams. If you get more pain, swelling, dizziness, trouble breathing, you come straight back. Understood. I nodded. Then she asked softly, Do you feel safe going home? Yes, I said. She followed with, Do you want to file a police report? I froze. I hadn't even let myself think that far ahead. She explained the urgent care had to document assault-related injuries. It was protocol. She handed me a folder with her notes and the x-ray results before the nurse returned to give me discharge papers. Derek didn't take me back to my car. He drove us to his apartment instead. His place was small but tidy, the kind of clean that came from habit, not guests. 1 bedroom, tiny kitchen, a couch that had seen better days. He pointed at it. Sit. I'll get food. I sat, staring at the folder without seeing anything. My phone buzzed with texts from numbers I didn't recognize. Someone had already shared the gym video. Derek came back with a turkey sandwich and a bag of frozen peas wrapped in a towel. He handed them over without ceremony. Eat. Ice your ribs. I ate because he was watching, because doing something felt better than sitting in silence. Then, in a calm but steady voice, he said, You should think about reporting him. I hadn't thought about it. My brain was still stuck on the metallic clang of Bo slamming into the squat rack. Derek leaned forward, elbows on his knees. People like Bo don't stop unless someone makes them stop. We sat like that, TV flickering in the background, some cooking show neither of us was actually watching. That night, I tried to sleep on the couch. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the paint like they could drown out the sound of laughter from the gym. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Bo's face again. Around midnight, I got up to use the bathroom. On the coffee table, Derek had left a glass of water and a pack of crackers. A small gesture, but it cracked something warm open in my chest. I ate them just to keep my hands busy. My wrist throbbed worse when I stayed still. My ribs ached every time I shifted. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from unknown numbers. More texts. People wanted to know if I was the guy from the gym video. I flipped the phone face down and tried again to sleep. At 3 a.m., I finally opened the patient portal and typed out a message to Dr. N. I told them what had happened. Asked for an urgent appointment. The little check mark appeared. Message sent. By the time I actually fell asleep, it was almost 4 a.m. Derek's alarm jolted me awake at 7. Coffee smells drifted from the kitchen. My whole body felt like it had been through a car wreck. At 8:15 on the dot, the receptionist from Dr. N's office called. The doctor wants to see you this afternoon at 2:30, she said. I didn't even let her offer another time. I just said yes. Derek drove me back to the gym parking lot to get my car. The lot was empty, silent. My Honda sat there like a witness. I drove home, showered, changed, and took more photos of the bruises in daylight. They darkened overnight, the purple deepening like ink spreading through paper. At 2:15, I checked in at Dr. N's office. The nurse brought me back within 5 minutes. She wrapped the blood pressure cuff around my arm, took my temperature, then asked me to roll up my sleeve. The moment she saw the bruising, something in her expression shifted. She typed something into the system, a small red flag appearing next to my name. Dr. N will be right in, she said quickly. 10 minutes later, Dr. N walked in with a tablet in hand. I saw the urgent care notes, he said. Let's take a look. I lifted my shirt and rolled up my sleeve. He examined the bruises with gloved hands, pressing gently, asking where it hurt most. Nothing's broken, he said, pointing to the x-rays. But your bones are still vulnerable. And honestly, this could have ended much worse. He asked me to explain everything from the beginning, the gym, Bo, the grab, the shove. I told him everything, every brutal detail. When I finished, he leaned back slightly. Did we give you medical clearance to train yet? I shook my head. I didn't think I needed it. He nodded slowly. That's on us too. It should have been part of your post-treatment plan. Then he turned to his computer and began typing, the soft clatter of keys filling the room. It was the sound of something official starting, something real. And for the first time since that gym, it didn't feel like I was just surviving. Felt like I was being heard. Dr. N explained carefully that he was writing me a full medical clearance letter, not just a note but something official. He said it would state clearly that I was medically approved for progressive strength training, as long as I worked under appropriate supervision. He included details about my cancer history, current recovery status, and specific precautions I should keep in mind while exercising. When he printed it on official letterhead and signed it with his actual signature in blue ink, something shifted inside me. It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was proof. Proof that I wasn't broken. Proof that I belonged back in a gym. He handed me the letter in a folder. Keep copies, he said. Some gyms might want this on file. I pressed the folder against my chest, and for the first time in days, the tightness there loosened a little. Then he pulled up my latest blood work and frowned slightly. Your iron levels are still lower than I want, he said. He adjusted my supplement dosage and printed a new prescription. He explained that the low iron was probably why I'd been dragging lately, the fatigue, the dizziness. This should help within a few weeks, he added. I thanked him. We booked my next follow-up for 6 weeks. Outside, Derek was waiting in his car, idling in the drop-off lane. He didn't ask many questions. He just drove me back to his place, made sandwiches, and set them down on the kitchen table. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was steady, solid. Then, out of nowhere, he said, You should talk to a lawyer. I looked up from my sandwich. Derek, I can't afford. My sister used someone named Delaney Bishop, he interrupted. She gives a free first consult. You don't pay unless there's a case worth taking. The idea made my stomach twist. I didn't want to deal with lawyers. I wanted to erase the whole gym from my brain. But Derek's voice sharpened a little. Bo grabbed you, in front of witnesses. He humiliated you. People like that don't stop unless someone makes them. I stared down at my sandwich, trying to figure out if I had the strength to fight this. Then I thought about the next person like me who might walk through that gym door. Give me her number, I said quietly. He texted it to me immediately. I called right then from his kitchen table. A paralegal answered on the second ring. She asked quick, direct questions, timing, witnesses, injuries. When I finished, she told me Delaney had a free consultation slot Friday afternoon and asked if that worked. Yes, I said before I could talk myself out of it. She told me to bring anything I had. Photos, medical records, anything related to the incident. When I hung up, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt since the attack. Control. I stayed at Derek's for another night. Felt safer there. But 2 days later, I went back to my own apartment, trying to build some kind of normal routine again. I made breakfast. I checked my email. I pretended I wasn't waiting for the world to cave in. Then my phone started buzzing. Non-stop. 15 Instagram notifications. 20 on Facebook. Texts from people I barely knew. I opened Instagram and felt my stomach drop. Greg had posted a video. The video, or at least part of it, showed me shoving Bo, but they'd edited everything else out. The caption read something like, "Roid rage from skeleton boy skull flexed biceps." The comments were already a dumpster fire. "Dude looks like he's on meth. Clearly mentally unstable. Guess concentration camp survivors fight back now." My hands started to shake as I scrolled. The video had been shared to local gym pages and even a bodybuilding forum. Strangers, people who hadn't even been there, were dissecting me like I was a headline. Someone who recognized me from my powerlifting days said cancer must have fried my brain. Watching the share count climb was like watching a fuse burn toward an explosion I couldn't stop. My heart pounded. My breath went shallow. I set the phone down before I hurled it against the wall. 10 minutes later, Derek called. "Don't say anything online yet," he said before I could speak. His voice was urgent. "Listen, I found something. Someone named Noah posted the unedited video in a private powerlifting group I'm in." He explained that it showed everything. Bo poking my spine, the taunts, the wrist grab, him dragging me toward the exit. All of it. "I'm downloading it now. You need to save it for the lawyer," Derek said. He'd already reported Greg's video for misleading content and told me to do the same. I opened my laptop. A few minutes later, he sent me the file. Watching it made my stomach twist into a knot. You could hear every insult Bo threw at me, every disgusting laugh, every step he took toward me. But this time, people saw the truth. The comments on Noah's post were the polar opposite of Greg's. "This is assault. That guy should lose his business. What kind of monster mocks someone like that?" I saved 3 copies of the video. One on my laptop, one on a drive, one in the cloud. Then I called Delaney's office to see if we could move the appointment up. The paralegal called back within the hour. "She's got a cancellation Thursday afternoon. Can you make it?" "Yes," I said. On Thursday, I walked into Delaney's office with my laptop, phone, flash drive, medical records, and printed photos of my bruises. Her office was small, but it didn't have that sterile, polished feel of lawyers on TV. Felt real. Stacks of case files lined her desk. Law degrees hung on the wall. She shook my hand with a firm grip and gestured for me to sit. "Walk me through everything," she said. And for the first time since Bo's hand closed around my wrist in that gym, I didn't just feel like a victim telling a story. I felt like someone getting ready to fight back. I started at the very beginning, the front desk guy's warning, and walked Delaney through every second I could remember. I laid the photos on her desk. The shredded competition shots, the purpled fingerprint marks ringing my wrist. She didn't interrupt once. Just a steady rhythm of pen on yellow legal pad. Nodding occasionally, underlining when I quoted Bo word for word. When I queued up Greg's chopped clip first and then the full, unedited video, she watched both twice. No flinching, no gasps. Just that lawyer stare that measures angles. "Email me both files," she said. "And give me the names of anyone you recognize in the background. Potential witnesses." I typed a quick list on my phone and sent it while she leaned back in her chair. "You have grounds for a civil assault and battery claim," she said plainly. "The video and your medical records are strong. The criminal side is separate. That's the police if you want to file." She didn't sugarcoat it. Cases take energy, time. Decide what outcome you actually want. Money, apology, criminal charges, some combination. I sat there, pulse thudding in my ears. Money would help, the bills were stacking up, but that wasn't it. "I want real consequences so he can't do this to anyone else," I said. "I want the gym to take down the videos and issue a public apology that admits what happened." She nodded once. "Reasonable. We can pursue that with a civil demand and, if you choose, a criminal complaint." Then came the numbers, flat fees for certain services, or contingency if we went all the way to litigation. "Smart first move," she said, "is a demand letter to Bo and the gym. Specific actions, specific deadlines, preservation of evidence. See how they respond before we commit to filing. It would cost $500. It would outline the evidence and the claims we were prepared to bring if they stonewalled." I signed a limited representation agreement right there and handed over my card. Her pen clicked. "Contract done. I'll have the letters out within 2 business days," she said. "Expect a response or silence within a week." 3 days later, Delaney called. Letters sent by certified mail to Bo personally and to the gym. She'd attached my medical clearance from Dr. N, the unedited video, photos of my bruises, and a minute-by-minute timeline. The demand: preserve all security footage and any other recordings. Pull every social post about me. Issue a written apology. Refund my membership fee. She made it crystal clear we had documentation and were ready to pursue civil damages and involve law enforcement if they played games. Both green cards signed, tracking confirmed. Now we wait. The gym responded in 3 days, just not the way we'd hoped. A law firm letterhead hit my inbox like a brick. They pointed to the liability waiver I'd signed at sign-up, accused me of disruptive, unsafe lifting practices, and reframed the whole thing as Bo escorting a disruptive member for safety. No assault. No apology. Membership terminated for policy violations. No refund. And a threat. Keep defaming their business and they'd countersue. I read it twice, blood roaring in my ears. Somehow I was the problem. The following Tuesday, I sat across from Delaney again while she read their letter with the calm of someone who'd seen this exact movie 100 times. 2 paths, she said, lining them up like chess pieces. 1. Small claims, refund plus assault damages. Faster, cheaper, but there's a cap on what you can recover. 2. File a police report for assault. That can trigger criminal charges and gives us leverage with their insurer. My recommendation? Do both. The criminal complaint makes the insurance company nervous and can push them toward a settlement. She glanced at her calendar. Assault reporting windows can be short in some jurisdictions. Go soon. Bring everything: medical records, photos, videos, your urgent care notes, Dr. N's clearance. My follow-up with Dr. N was already set for Thursday. I showed up with a fresh med list and a printout of my symptoms, the demand letter and the gym's response tucked in the same folder. As I signed in at the front desk, I felt that same knot coil in my stomach. Not fear this time, exactly, but the pressure that builds right before you step onto a platform, chalk on your hands, barbell waiting. Because after this appointment, after I walked out with my chart updated and my clearance reaffirmed, I was headed somewhere else next. A place with a badge, a timestamp, and an incident number. Would they take me seriously? Would this be the moment the tide finally turned? Or the start of a bigger fight than I'd imagined? Dr. N ran his usual checks: blood panel, surgical site inspection, all the routine post-treatment steps. When he came back into the room with the results, there was actually a spark of good news in his voice. Your numbers are climbing, he said, turning the monitor toward me. My red blood cell count was finally creeping upward. Protein levels too. It meant my body wasn't just surviving anymore. It was actually starting to rebuild. But then his expression shifted. How have your stress levels been? Sleep, and I couldn't sugarcoat it. 4 hours a night, maybe. And I've been stress-eating garbage because I don't have the energy to cook. He leaned back on the stool, eyebrows furrowed. What's going on outside of your recovery? So I told him everything. The gym. Oh, the lawyer. The pressure. How every time I tried to sleep, I saw those faces laughing. Dr. N didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he let out a slow breath. Chronic stress can slow healing. Your body's fighting to rebuild itself, and this kind of pressure doesn't help. He reached for a referral pad and scribbled down a name. Hope Hart, a physical therapist who specializes in working with cancer survivors rebuilding strength. She knows how to guide training safely after treatment, physically and mentally. Structured goals. Real support. Then he did something that surprised me. He called her office right there from the room. A few minutes later, I had an assessment appointment booked for the following week. I'm serious, he said, giving me that look doctors reserve for when they know you're about to self-sabotage. Promise me you'll actually go. Don't cancel because you're too tired or anxious. I promised. That night, I was trying to zone out with some random Netflix show when my phone buzzed. A DM. Unknown account. But the profile picture? Oh, the message was pure venom. Drop this legal crap now or I'll bury you. My lawyers will destroy you in court. You're trying to ruin my business, and I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of lying loser you are. You have no idea who you're messing with. I have connections. Walk away while you still can. My hands went cold. I took screenshots of everything, his profile, the timestamp, the full thread, and forwarded them straight to Delaney. She replied almost instantly. Perfect. That's harassment and threats. Save everything. Block him. Don't respond to a single word. I screenshotted the thread again for good measure, then blocked him on Instagram, Facebook, everything. Not even an hour later, Derek called. You good? He asked. I told him about the message. There was a long, quiet pause on the other end. Then, use my garage gym. Full rack, bench, plates. No cameras. No idiots watching every move. Something inside me finally loosened. Yeah, I said quietly. Yeah, I'd like that. 3 days later, I walked into Hope's clinic for my first session. The place smelled like rubber mats, sanitizer, and that clean, quiet energy you only get in small training spaces. She handed me forms to fill out, cancer history, surgeries, current symptoms, then led me into a private room with mirrors and equipment. For almost an hour, she had me move through slow, controlled assessments. She tested every joint, asked where it hurt, checked my posture, asked about fatigue and nerve pain. When I mentioned I used to squat 800 pounds, she didn't blink, didn't act surprised. She just nodded and wrote it down. I work with survivors like you all the time, she said calmly. And the hardest part isn't usually the weight. It's the mind. Accepting that your body has changed, but it's still yours. And it can get strong again. Her words landed like something solid under my feet. For the first time since that awful day in the gym, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't fighting this battle alone anymore. Hope didn't sugarcoat anything. She sat me down with a whiteboard and laid out a 12-week program that started at a level that felt almost insulting compared to who I used to be. Bodyweight squats, assisted push-ups, light resistance bands. Movements I could have done half asleep back when my squat was 800 pounds. But she was methodical, every week had clear benchmarks. When to add reps, when to add weight, when to not push through pain. She built in rest days, fatigue tracking, and clear stop rules for anything that crossed the line from discomfort into danger. Comparing yourself to your pre-cancer numbers is a trap, she told me bluntly. You'll only frustrate yourself and get hurt. We're not chasing your old self. We're building your current one stronger. I walked out of her clinic with a thick binder full of exercises, tracking sheets, and safety notes. My brain was buzzing with conflicting emotions. Hope, frustration, determination, all tangled together. It wasn't the triumphant return I'd pictured. It was a quiet, careful rebuild from the ground up. The very next morning, I drove to the police station, folder in hand. Inside were everything I'd collected over the past few weeks, photos of the bruises, urgent care reports, doctor's notes about my medical history, the medical clearance letter, and both versions of the gym video. The front desk officer directed me to an interview room. It was small, neutral, and cold. I sat there clutching my folder like it was a lifeline until a younger officer came in with a notepad. He let me tell my story in full, only interrupting to ask for timestamps or specific quotes from Bo. No judgment in his eyes, just calm, steady professionalism. It was the first time since the assault that someone outside my circle had treated my story like fact, not drama. When I showed him the videos, the slick, edited version Greg had posted and the unedited one that Noah shared, he leaned forward slightly. "This kind of evidence," he said, "makes cases a lot stronger." He explained that a detective named Williams handled assault cases and would follow up within the week. I signed the formal report, slid the folder back under my arm, and walked out of that station feeling like I just shifted something heavy off my chest. For once, I wasn't just reacting. I was acting. For days later, my phone buzzed. "Detective Williams," the voice said, calm, precise, older. "I've reviewed your initial statement. Can you come in tomorrow for a more detailed interview?" He mentioned he'd handled multiple gym-related assaults before. He understood the culture. That alone made me breathe a little easier. I spent the night going over everything again in my head, replaying it like a script so I wouldn't stumble when the questions came. Williams was exactly what I expected. Late 50s, gray hair, direct and sharp but not cold. He sat me down in his office and asked me to walk through everything, from the moment I stepped through the gym doors to the second I left the parking lot. He watched both videos on his computer, pausing often, zooming in when Bo poked my spine, when he wrapped his hand around my wrist, when the crowd started gathering. He flipped through my medical documents, checking the treatment history, the urgent care notes, the x-ray reports. Then came the key question. "Did you feel threatened? Did you think he might hurt you?" "Yes," I said, my throat tightening just a little. When he grabbed me and started dragging me toward the exit, I thought he was going to seriously hurt me. Williams wrote it down, nodding slowly. He asked about Bo's comments regarding my medical condition, whether anyone tried to intervene, whether I could identify other witnesses. I gave him every name I could remember. After going through everything, Williams leaned back in his chair. "With this level of evidence, video, medical records, witness potential, there's probable cause for assault charges," he said. His tone wasn't dramatic, just solid, real. He explained the process. The district attorney's office would weigh the evidence, Bo's history, and my willingness to pursue criminal charges or accept a civil route. He'd be forwarding everything to the DA with his recommendation to file. The decision would take a few weeks, but this was a real case now, not just a story in a gym. When I walked out of the station, the air felt a little different on my face. Lighter. Not because the fight was over, it wasn't, but because for the first time, Bo wasn't the only one who held power in this story. Someone with actual authority had looked at the evidence and said, yes, this matters. 2 days after my police interview, my phone rang. It was Delaney. The gym manager reached out through their lawyer, she said. They want mediation, private resolution. No court, no headlines. She explained this kind of move was common when a business finally realized it wasn't holding the better hand. They know the video, the medical documentation, and the police report give us real leverage, she said. If we handle this carefully, mediation could work in our favor. And if it doesn't, nothing stops us from continuing the criminal process. I agreed to consider it, but only if they met my conditions. Delaney started drafting a formal response on the spot. We'll make this on our terms, she said, tapping her keyboard like she'd done this 100 times before. Our terms were crystal clear. The entire mediation had to be recorded. Both Bo and the gym manager had to attend in person. No hiding behind lawyers. Any agreement reached had to be in writing with strict enforcement language. Then came the list of demands. A full refund of my gym membership. A public apology from Bo and the gym. Complete removal of all social media videos and posts. Mandatory staff training on harassment and discrimination. And payment of every medical expense I'd racked up, urgent care, follow-ups, physical therapy. Delaney sent the terms to their legal team, and then we waited. The mediation was scheduled a week later in a gray, nondescript office building downtown. The third floor smelled faintly of old coffee and carpet cleaner. We arrived 20 minutes early. Delaney and I sat in a small waiting room while she reviewed her notes one more time, calm as ever. I tried to match her steadiness, but my heart was doing sprints in my chest. When the mediator called us in, Bo was already sitting at the table with his lawyer. A tall, polished guy in a charcoal suit who looked like he'd never set foot in a weight room in his life. Next to them sat the gym manager, fidgeting with a pen. On her other side, a woman in a navy blazer with sharp eyes and a leather briefcase. Delaney leaned toward me. Corporate counsel, she whispered. That made my pulse spike. They'd brought in the parent company's lawyer. This wasn't just Bo trying to save face, they were worried. The mediator introduced herself, explained that nothing said here could be used outside the session unless we reached a formal agreement, and laid out the ground rules. Each side would present their version of events before discussing potential resolutions. Bo's lawyer went first. He called it a misunderstanding between gym members. Claimed Bo was concerned for my safety. Said Bo suggested I'd be more comfortable at another facility more suited to my fitness level. Bo nodded along like a bobblehead. My jaw locked. I could feel the same heat crawling up my neck that I'd felt the day he humiliated me in front of everyone. Then the lawyer said Bo was acting in my best interest. Delaney waited silent, patient, until he finished. Then she calmly asked, "May I share some evidence?" She flipped open her laptop and turned the screen toward the room. The unedited video started. The room changed with it. The mediator's polite expression hardened when Bo poked my spine during the squat. When the footage showed him grabbing my wrist and dragging me toward the exit, the corporate counsel sat forward, yanked out a notepad, and started writing like her life depended on it. Bo's lawyer tried to cut in, but the mediator raised a hand and shut him down. The video played to the end. When the last frame froze on Bo's hand wrapped around my arm, the room fell silent. Delaney slid Dr. N's medical clearance letter across the table like she was setting down a trump card. I took a breath and told them about my competition history, my world records, my 800-pound squat, everything. My voice didn't shake this time. Bo's lawyer blinked, clearly not expecting that detail. He glanced sideways at Bo, who stared down at the table like it suddenly became the most fascinating thing in the world. The gym manager tried to salvage something, talking about high-performance standards and serious lifters only. That's when Delaney's tone sharpened. Not loud, but firm enough to make everyone listen. She calmly listed the state and federal anti-discrimination laws that their behavior could be violating by number. Each one landed like a hammer. The corporate lawyer's pen flew even faster. And then, in a twist I didn't expect, she interrupted her own client. "Let's take a break," she said flatly, already gathering her notes. "We need to confer." As they stepped out of the room, Delaney leaned back in her chair, completely composed. "That," she said quietly, "is the sound of leverage." The mediator announced a 20-minute recess, and Delaney and I slipped back into the smaller waiting room. She didn't even need to say it. The satisfied curve of her mouth said everything. "The video hit exactly the way I hoped," she told me quietly. "Did you see the corporate lawyer's face? They know they've got a liability problem." She didn't sound giddy or smug, just steady, calculated, like this was exactly where she'd aimed to land. When we walked back into the conference room, the energy was completely different. Gone was the confident, dismissive vibe from their side. Now the corporate lawyer was in charge, and everyone else sat still like they'd just gotten a legal reality check. She spoke first. "Their new offer: full refund of my gym membership, removal of all videos from every official gym social media account, a newly drafted harassment prevention policy with mandatory staff training, coverage of my urgent care visit from the night of the assault, but no coverage of my attorney's fees, and absolutely no public apology." They hid behind reputation concerns, but it boiled down to not wanting to admit anything publicly. I felt the frustration rise, sharp and hot. After everything Bo had done, everything I'd gone through, I wanted them to say it. Out loud. Own it. Delaney asked the mediator for a few minutes to confer privately. We stepped into the hallway, and she leaned against the wall, voice calm and clear. "I know that part stings," she said. "But look at what they're agreeing to. Policy change, coverage, a clean paper trail. Those things actually matter. A forced public apology won't. It'll be meaningless PR, if they even honor it." She reminded me, gently but firmly, "You still have the criminal case. That's where real accountability can happen. This is just one part of the fight." I stood there breathing slowly, feeling the edges of my anger soften. Not disappear, but shift. She was right. We went back in. Delaney looked the corporate lawyer dead in the eye and said, "We'll accept the offer on one condition. A written acknowledgement that the incident violated your own internal policies. Not for publication, just for our records." The corporate lawyer hesitated, then nodded once. "Agreed." The mediator drafted the settlement right there. Delaney combed through every line. No shortcuts, no vague wording. We all signed an hour later. Walking out of that building, I didn't feel the triumphant surge I'd imagined. It wasn't a clean victory, but the boiling rage I'd carried for weeks had cooled into something quieter, sharper. Delaney walked me to my car and reminded me, "The DA makes their own decision. Mediation doesn't change that. Williams still has your case." That thought anchored me. Bo might still face more than a settlement. The next 2 weeks were quiet. I checked my inbox like clockwork, waiting for an update from Detective Williams. Nothing. But life didn't stop. Derek kept his promise. His garage gym was open to me 3 times a week. I followed Hope's program to the letter. The weights were light, laughably light compared to my past, but for the first time since chemo ended, I wasn't in pain. One Tuesday morning, I set my phone on a crate in the corner of Derek's garage, hit record, and started a set of bodyweight squats. The familiar creak of the barbell rack, the smell of chalk, dust, and metal. It felt real. 10 reps. No pain in my ribs. No sharp pulling where my scars ran. Just the dull, satisfying burn of muscles waking up. I did 2 more sets and sent the video straight to Hope. She replied within an hour. Form looks great. Clear to add lightweight next session. That tiny line of text hit harder than any legal offer. This wasn't about what Bo did anymore. This was about me. 3 days later, I was meal prepping in the kitchen. Nothing fancy, just chicken and rice in plastic containers, when my phone buzzed. Detective Williams. The second I saw his name light up the screen, my stomach tightened. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and answered. Hey, this is Detective Williams. His steady voice came through the line. I've got an update on your case. Detective Williams didn't waste a second on small talk. His voice was calm and steady, like he'd delivered news like this 100 times before. The district attorney's office has reviewed everything, he said. They're offering Bo a pre-filing diversion program instead of formal charges. That means if he completes court-mandated anger management and pays full restitution for your medical costs, they won't file criminal charges. I asked the only question that came to mind. What if he refuses? Then we file charges automatically, he said. No second chances. If he signs the agreement, he has to complete every requirement or the case moves forward. When I hung up, I sat there with my phone in my hand, feeling complicated. Part of me wanted Bo to have a criminal record. Something permanent. Something that would follow him the way the scars on my ribs followed me. But another part of me just wanted my life back. I called Delaney immediately. She picked up on the second ring. She listened while I explained the DA's offer, then exhaled softly. That's pretty standard, she said. Diversion's common for first-time offenders. Keeps the courts from getting bogged down. But this isn't nothing. He'll have to complete the program and pay you back. She broke it down clearly. No trial meant no months of stressful hearings. No cross-examinations. No defense attorney trying to pick apart my medical history in front of a jury. And, she added, you'll actually get money for your medical costs and some of my fees. It's not perfect justice, but it's real. I asked, doesn't this just let him walk away without consequences? Her voice softened a little. No, it makes him work for it. But more importantly, it lets you walk away. You've already fought this battle once in that gym. Do you really want to fight it again in a courtroom? That thought stuck with me all afternoon. I talked it over with Derek that night in his garage gym, sitting on the bench press like it was a kitchen table. He asked me a question no one else had. What outcome lets you actually sleep at night? And that hit home. I didn't want to spend another year tangled in court dates. I wanted to train, to breathe, to live. At my next appointment, Dr. N gave me the practical side of the same truth. Legal battles are draining, he said simply. You need that energy for your recovery. For you. If he's paying restitution and facing mandatory anger management, those are real consequences. Not symbolic ones. 3 days later, after turning it over every possible way in my head, I called Delaney back. Tell the DA I'll accept the diversion. It wasn't the cinematic justice I'd imagined in those sleepless nights, but it was something solid. Bo would have to complete his program. He'd have to pay me back. And I could finally stop living with this case hanging over my head like a storm cloud. Delaney confirmed the acceptance that same afternoon. The DA's office started drafting the official diversion paperwork, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could exhale without it catching in my throat. 2 weeks later, I sat across from the prosecutor in a small, neutral office in the courthouse. A stack of papers spread out on the table between us. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that settles in right before something final. The agreement was simple and clear. Bo had to complete 12 weeks of anger management with a licensed therapist. He had to pay $2,400 in restitution to cover my urgent care medical costs. If he missed either requirement, assault charges would be filed automatically. No mediation, no more negotiations, no second chances. The prosecutor explained Bo had already been notified. He had 30 days to enroll in the program or the DA would move forward with criminal charges. I picked up the pen, signed my name, and slid the paperwork back across the table. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Light. Like I'd finally closed a door that had been stuck open, letting cold air seep into everything. That same week, Greg's edited video finally vanished from social media. I'd reported it so many times I'd lost count. The gym wiped their official accounts too. No surprise there. I was sure their corporate lawyer had made that call the second mediation ended. But the internet doesn't forget easily. A few trolls had saved copies and reposted them on random accounts. One message said I was a faker who photoshopped competition pictures. Another said I looked like I belonged in a hospital, not a gym. At first, the comments stung like open wounds. But Derek drilled it into me. Don't explain, don't argue, just block. So I did. I muted notifications, deleted messages without reading past the first few words, and started to reclaim the quiet in my head. Then came something real. My next training session with Hope. She stood by the squat rack with that calm, steady presence of hers and told me I was officially cleared to add actual weight. We loaded just 95 pounds total, the empty bar with a 25 on each side. Objectively light. But to me, stepping under that bar again felt monumental. Hope angled her phone to film my sets, making sure every rep was clean. I took a deep breath, braced, and lowered myself into the first squat. My legs trembled a little, not from pain but from emotion. 3 sets of 5. No pain in my ribs. No pulling on my scars. Just strength. Between sets, Hope reviewed the video and adjusted my stance slightly. Wider feet, tighter back. Everything was intentional. When we finished, she sent me home with strict orders to rest for 2 full days and to text her at the first hint of anything wrong. Dr. N's follow-up appointment the next week felt different too. For once, the numbers matched how I felt. Iron levels climbing steadily. Protein solid. White blood cell count finally back in the normal range. He actually smiled when he looked at the chart. "This is good," he said. "Really good." For the first time since that awful day in the gym, my life wasn't defined by what Bo had done. It was defined by what I was building again. Slowly, carefully, but undeniably mine. Dr. N's checkup that day felt different. He didn't just look at the numbers, he asked real questions about my training. How many days a week was I lifting? What weights was I using? How was I feeling between sessions? I told him about Hope's cautious programming, the progressive increases, and her no-ego approach. He nodded with that subtle approving look doctors get when they finally see the recovery they've been hoping for. "Good," he said. "This is exactly what I like to hear." Then came the best news of all. He reduced my monitoring appointments from once a month to every 6 weeks. It might sound small, but it felt huge. Like proof my body had finally stopped fighting me and had started working with me again. That weekend, Derek introduced me to a meet director at a cozy coffee shop near his place. This guy ran small powerlifting competitions designed specifically for adaptive athletes and people coming back from medical setbacks. The director sipped his coffee and explained that his meets weren't like the big, intimidating nationals I used to do. "Different vibe entirely," he said. "We focus on personal progress, not chasing totals." He flipped through the training log Hope kept and smiled. "Honestly, you could be ready to compete in 3 months. Whatever numbers you can safely hit, that's what matters." He explained that plenty of competitors came in with modest totals, but every single one of them represented a comeback story. No judgment, no mockery, just the bar, the platform, and the lifter. I thanked him for the info, but the idea of competing again made my chest tighten. My hands actually trembled a little around the coffee cup. I hadn't set foot on a platform since before cancer. Hope brought it up during our next training session before I even mentioned it. "If you decide to compete," she said, "it gives us a clean structure for the next 3 months. Goals, timelines, a real arc to build toward." After training, we sat down at a small table in the corner of the clinic and mapped it out together. Squat, 185 pounds target. Bench press, 135 pounds target. Deadlift, 225 pounds target. Numbers that once would have been warm-ups. Numbers that right now felt like mountains. I looked at those figures and felt a weird, heavy mix of pride and shame. Pride for how far I'd come, and shame because I used to lift triple that. Hope must have read the look on my face because she put her pen down and said, quietly but firmly, "The only comparison that matters is you now versus you last month. Not you before cancer. Those goals are real. They matter." It hit me harder than I expected. The next morning, I opened the meet registration site. The page stared back at me like a challenge. I hovered over the form for at least 10 minutes, hands clammy, heart racing. Then I filled it out. $50 entry fee. Weight class, 148 pounds. I gained back 16 pounds of muscle since treatment. When I hit submit, it felt less like signing up for a meet and more like reclaiming something I thought I'd lost forever. Not my old numbers. Not my old records. Myself. The registration confirmation email hit my inbox like a quiet earthquake. Seeing my name, my weight class, and that meet date in black and white made it real. No more maybe someday. This was happening. I screenshotted it instantly and sent it to Hope, Derek, and Dr. N with one simple message. I committed. This comeback wasn't about chasing my old records or proving anything to Bo, or Greg, or the internet trolls who thought they knew my story. It wasn't about 800-pound squats or medals or the past. It was about stepping onto that platform and doing 3 lifts as a competitor again. Proving to myself that I was still a lifter, even if I was a different version than before. And that's where things are now. I'm not back to my old numbers, but I've got weight on the bar. I'm training. I'm moving forward.
Thanks for watching. Today's train wreck is over, but tomorrow's ride is already on track. Subscribe so you don't miss it.